Okay, we should be live now. And last week we discussed the 20 plus perennials for Zone 6B gardens, and we came up with at least 20 things that are perennials. And if anybody wants to comment on that, Liz, did you learn any new ones that you weren't familiar with?
I'm trying to go through the list, and I'm the only thing that just popped in my head that I knew was a good perennial is sunchoke, which was something other than when Kyle had pulled them out and started planting them. I had never really heard of those before.
I planted sunchoke probably 6-7 years ago, and they came up that year and they bloomed for me, and then they didn't come back. So I don't know if they just didn't like where I had planted them. I didn't do any harvesting. I was just trying to get them established, and they didn't do well where I put them.
So where was that?
Back behind the house, kind of on the forest edge back behind the house off of our little deck. We've got a tree back there, and I planted it. I had to plant it deep enough into the forest to where it wouldn't get mowed constantly. Right at that point, Raiden was at the riding lawnmower, and even though I put a little circle of bricks around it, didn't really protect it very much. But it was back behind the house. Same place I planted horseradish, which I was hopeful for, but it didn't do anything either. I think it probably needs more light than what either of them got.
Yeah, I would expect that's the problem. Although I've seen where Kyle planted his over there right next to his shop, and I was surprised it doesn't seem to get a lot of light. But his are doing just growing like gangbusters over in West Virginia.
Wow! So maybe I should try again.
Yeah,
because they're just a little bit cooler than we are.
Yeah, well, they'll grow.
Planted over here, how did they do?
All of mine died because I think I got them in too late.
But didn't Kyle have a good stand of them over here?
Oh, you mean over his? I'm not aware of them over there. This place.
I remember there being some discussion about if nothing else, Dolores said she could come and eat the sunchokes.
I just heard her say she's going to come to Kyle's house, but anyway. So
I'll have to jump out and look at the list that you came up with for the perennials. I bought a packet of medicinal seeds to plant. They too would be perennials. But I haven't paid attention to them yet. I haven't even started them in little potting pots.
Like one thing that I learned last week was when I was doing the research was that arugula, the native arugula, wild arugula, is actually perennial. And
really?
I should have known that from eating it, about any time of the year. But anyway, when it blooms, it kind of looks like a little daisy. But
and it readily reseeds itself.
Yeah, and it's a perennial. It may be a short-lived perennial. I'm not sure, but I've got it in various parts of my pasture and around the woods edges around here.
Nice.
And very nice. Some in the garden.
So anyway, well, let's go over the markets right quick. It was an exciting day at the markets. Gold was up a couple of $100 since last week. It's at $22.82. Silver was up a couple of dollars since last week at $26.21. The gold silver ratio is still really high at 1:87. And pretty much everything in the markets were down today except gold, silver, and oil. Bitcoin was heavily down, where it's been the only leaders. But tilt and zeros were down and looked like they dropped below their support level. I think that's due to everybody deciding that the Fed is really not going to cut the interest rates 3 times this year.
Yeah, what a roller coaster
Yeah. Wheat was down 9 cents today to 5.29, which is still more than it was last week at this time. The XAR military industrial complex was pretty much mixed except for Boeing and GE, which were both down. GE was down like 22%, I think, today. And I was kind of surprised at that. I was shorting it with a call spread, and I thought, well, I'm rich today, but I only had 5 contracts. And and then the reason it was down so much was because they split off their energy section, so like solar and that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so that made the value of the mother stock worth less. So I'm not sure whether I really made any money on that or not, but take a few days for the options to sort that out. So anyway, natural gas was up pretty good, about $1 since last week, and the futures are up to $1.85. All the natural gas stocks pretty much did pretty well. Cost of production still at $2.30, so expect it's still going to go up from here. Bitcoin was down to around 65,000 today, and something real interesting, which I use bits and BitI for my substitutes for going long or short in Bitcoin, and bits was down 5.6% and BitI was up 5.6%, which
Huh.
exactly the way it should work, but it hasn't been working that way lately. So I was kind of pleased with that. Looks like everybody's kind of got in those 2 substitutes for playing Bitcoin, where Bitcoin itself was only down like 2%, but bits was down 5.6%. So there's some leverage in those two compared to Bitcoin. Something to be aware of. And I was going to throw this out again here right quick, just to make everybody aware that they got no excuses. Our tax rates are going to go up after the next 2 tax years. If you're in the 22% today, that'll go up to 25% bracket, just because the Trump tax cuts that they said were only for the rich are going to expire. And so in 2020, I guess 24, yeah, 26 tax year, they will go up if Congress doesn't pass something, which I don't think is likely at this point, that they will give us any tax decreases, since they need all the money they can get from us and are intent on spending it all.
Yeah, those are going to pinch when that happens.
Yeah. So my point on all this is that if you've got a taxable 401k or IRA, before that happens, you might want to roll it into a Roth, pay today's tax rate and roll it into a Roth. Is my point in giving you 2 years warning on this.
Keep warning.
Yeah. Kind of changes the equation a little bit when you throw that in there. Okay, so we still got Texas National Guard getting overrun at the border. We've got a war on natural gas, war on cash, and I keep encouraging people to use that cash. It's not always the most convenient thing, but we got a better chance of keeping it around if we use it.
Yeah.
And
I think that's going to be a hard war, only because, like Raiden's age, he does not carry cash at all. He doesn't see any problem with going with a cashless system. right? And so I think that 20 something, early 30 something, they don't see any troubles with that.
Yeah. And a lot of businesses don't take cash anymore,
Yeah.
just one less thing to worry about, that employee theft and things like that.
Well, and when we went down to the church um, storehouse, they didn't take cash. They don't take checks.
Isn't
They
that
don't take
amazing?
credit card. Yeah.
They only take Visa and MasterCard, credit and debit. That's all they take.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I understand you don't have to bond anybody or worry about the money disappearing, but anyway.
Yeah, you don't have to run to the bank and deposit at night,
Yeah.
right? There's a whole plethora of positives, but the negative is pretty soon the government will see every penny you spend and where you spend it at.
Absolutely.
Privacy becomes a real issue at that point.
Yeah.
It's lost. So, and of course, aside from war on cash, there's a war on food in most of the European countries and India, and it's coming to America, where you have a war on gardens and small farms in Oregon. And they've really passed some draconian measures to call, any little food production operation a commercial farm, and basically stamp it out unless you're following all these regulations and
Mm-hmm.
things that you can't afford to do. In the Middle East, we got a port going up in Gaza, supposedly, that we're going to build. I don't know how we're going to do that in the middle of a war zone, but see. Of course, we had the major bridge collapse in Baltimore, and I just heard today there was one in Oklahoma.
Where?
I'm assuming it was on the Arkansas River, but
So do you think this is a little bit of conspiracy theory or just bad luck?
I, well, when we get three of them, for sure, the third one pops up, I think we'll know the answer to that. But I just think it was really interesting because within hours of the operation, Joe Biden stood up and said, this is not terrorism, it's just an accident, nothing to see here. And about 5 hours later, the NTSB actually boarded the ship for an inspection. So, he was talking with no information.
Uh-huh.
And they say the investigation of this accident will take 2 years.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. So, obviously, that makes me suspicious, but
I just pulled it up. It is on the Arkansas River, and it was a freight barge. Oh, wait a minute. This is something that said in May 26, 2002. There's nothing on here. It was on I-40 in 2002, but I put Oklahoma bridge collapse, and you did say Oklahoma, right?
yeah, that's what I heard today, but I didn't follow up on the story, and it may not have collapsed. It may have.
Oh, on this one, it was a collapse, and it was on I-40, so it was a major deal.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. We'll have to have more next week on that. The other thing I wanted to keep up here again was the 12 volt, 12 volt or 20 volt or whatever. The Li-ion batteries are pretty good fire exposure apparently, because they will blow up if like 50 watts runs through them, instead of 12 or 18 or 20. And if we was to have an EMP or a coronal mass ejection, those produce like 50,000 watts. So all of our tool batteries would go up in flames and be a bad fire hazard.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like I said last week, I'm not sure what to do about that, but something we need to think about.
Yeah, maybe it's time to get a metal shed and store that kind of stuff outside.
Yeah, just want to get them.
Electric set up to so that you can be able to do your charging outside,
Uh-huh.
because that would definitely be a problem.
So anyway, I just want to get that on everybody's radar. Start thinking about it. Seasonal information. So we're still in prime tree planting season. We should have finished pruning our trees and vines. Some of us haven't.
Got a lot of it done though.
That's true. We made lots of little sticks. Start garden starting time. Plant seeds indoors and sweet potato slips. Check bees. About time to put out swarm traps. I suspect we'll have early swarms this year since it's been so warm.
Yeah.
Order trees and seeds. Get your potassium iodine if you hadn't got it yet.
Got it just recently.
Cool. And so any progress anybody would like to talk about, like wood cutting or garden prep or prep spot or
Oh, Winston, tell me about your sweet potatoes. I know that you do sweet potato slips every year. Do you get a good crop of sweet potatoes?
Oh
We've
my.
never tried.
Oh my.
of the slips or the potatoes?
The potatoes after you plant your slips.
Well, last year we didn't because the drought, but we've been running, our beds are like 64 square foot, and we've been running well over 100 pounds out of each one of those beds with
Nice.
the purple sweet potatoes that we produce. So it's
Uh-huh.
one of the more productive crops, that you can plant per square foot.
Uh-huh. For poundage.
Yeah.
I'm sending you pictures. It's going to give you 4 pictures, but there's sweet potato pot full of sweet potato slips that just sent to you.
Nice.
I got one page down here. Also, we talked about goldbacks. They're probably up about 14% now from when we bought them a while back. So that's been a good thing that I think will be a good barter item or currency substitute.
Uh-huh.
The last one I found in the last week or two was primers, reloading ammo.
Uh-huh.
If you're leery about trading ammo to somebody you don't know, for fear that it might be used against you,
For sure.
I think you'd be pretty safe to trade primers, and they tend to go up and hold their value even more so than ammo, because there's been a perpetual shortage. But I think you asked a while back where I get ammo. There's a place over in Fishersville that Dominion Sporting Goods, and they have a good supply of ammo, and they had a pretty good supply of primers when we went over there a couple of weeks ago.
Huh.
So got some of those,
and decent prices.
Well, they're high, but I don't think we'll ever see. I used to get them for 2 cents a piece, and I've got several squirreled away with that with $2 price on them, and now they're like $8.99. Somewhere around 8 or 9 cents a primer. Sure.
Do you reload your brass?
I do when I get around to it. One of these days I'm gonna retire and reload a lot of it.
retire and do what you want to do, huh?
Yeah. Anyway, and then but primers are kind of perfect for the alpha strategy because they're high value, lightweight, and don't take up a lot of space. So it's to put $1,000 worth of them in in a 5-gallon bucket. And anyway. So this quote I saw a couple of weeks ago: whatever you least want to do is probably what you most need to do. So Liz keeps reminding me of that now.
He shouldn't have said it.
So what does that look like?
Those look like little slips.
Yeah, big
They're
slip.
looking healthy.
Some of them are like 3 foot long. I'm gonna have to like cut them off and put that part in a jar and because they're gonna be too big and long for.
How early can you put slips out?
Well, I think we need to wait at least a couple more weeks. If you look at average frost date here, it's April 16th, and so we could still have cold weather.
Yeah, our nights have been colder than I expected.
Yeah. So,
I'm looking and it's showing 235-degree days on Saturday and Sunday for those nights, and that's what's predicted.
Yeah.
Sweet potatoes definitely need warm soil as well as warm air.
Yeah, those are looking healthy and happy, Winston.
Here's my other seeds, which are kind of behind those. Tomatoes and arugula and cabbages and kale and lettuce and stuff like that. Those are coming along.
Very happy.
And we just had our first set of lambs on April Fool's Day.
Oh, yesterday, huh?
Wasn't expecting them until the 7th, but they fooled me.
She said, I'm tired of this.
Yeah. And
there was another ewe out there who is not ready to deliver, but she kept trying to run off with one of the lambs.
And look what's taken up nesting under the compost bin.
They must feel protected under there.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, one of them has laid most of the eggs. The other one has started depositing there too. So there were 13 eggs this afternoon.
Wow.
Colors.
I got to decide whether I'm gonna put them in an incubator or let one of those hens have a shot at it. But
maybe take half of them.
Yeah. So, okay, I think we're ready for video time. I have a share here.
Anyway, Livia would sent that picture to the girls or to the kids, and Livia was going, sister hens, sister wives. And I think they really are sisters because they come from the same Tom. They were last year's birds.
They're like, we'll just cuddle under here and lay our eggs together.
Yeah. They may set them together. Who knows? Oh.
Okay. I'm not seeing Okay. Are y'all seeing the screen of a plaid man?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, I watched one of their videos today about ginger.
Cool. Well, anyway, we did a sort of a video review of Joel Salatin's new book, Homestead's Tsunami, a couple of weeks ago. But they didn't talk about this part that they're talking about, which there's 7 reasons to start a homestead in 2024, which were kind of eye-opening. Not exactly what I would have expected from Joel Salatin, but he's very much the historian, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But let's go through that, and we'll come back and talk about it afterwards.
Of the day.
All right, so we are taking this right from Joel Salatin's Homestead Tsunami. Really want you to check this book out. Whether you are new to homesteading, whether you're a seasoned homesteader, this book is eye-opening. It's inspiring. It's encouraging. And yet it's calling us to action. It's calling us to think real. And so we're diving into a little bit of the heavies. Most of this book is actually like on all the positives. And maybe we'll do another section at some time. But we do need to realize there are things that, and we've realized in this last few years, that things come up that we wouldn't expect to experience in our society.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is that more of these things are possible. And so there's some things to keep in the back of our mind.
Okay.
At the moment, in the front of our mind.
Yeah.
So 7 reasons.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready. Let's get into them. Now, just to be clear, I haven't read this book yet. It's been on your bookshelf, so or on your nightstand.
And I've been reading
it.
So
as soon as you're done, I'm going to grab it and read it. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this.
Absolutely. And this is coming from chapter 5 in stashing and stockpiling.
Okay.
And it's a list of things of possibles that people face over time and reasons why we want to be prepared and why we want to be living prepared the homesteading life.
Yeah.
And in these times. And so number 1, it's a biggie, and it's war.
Ooh, yeah, we're seeing that, around the globe right
Well,
now, and we're walking into a season where we're seeing that happen again.
Yeah, and because we haven't experienced it in a big way in so long, we forget the realities. We don't know. Most of our generation doesn't understand. And Joel says here, nothing stresses food inventories like war. In America, we haven't fought, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, inside our borders since 1865. We really don't know the implications, and yet we're getting to a world where more and more we see Ukraine, we see Israel. I think most of us understand the potential implications and the challenges that could come. And Joel gives us a good reminder. The Romans felt impregnable.
Yeah.
They felt like they could never fail until they weren't. And so I think that's the point right there that we have to remember. It's not like this isn't war fear-mongering. The war is a reality of civilizations. Powerful civilizations feeling impregnable is a reality. Us getting comfortable is a reality. And understanding that things can change.
Yeah.
And that war will probably come again. And I'm not making a prediction, neither is Joel, about tomorrow or this year or anything.
Right.
But it is a reality. And so it's something to remember that we can face those challenges. The homesteading life is an answer to that living prepared.
Yeah, that's very good. I think of the BBC TV show, what is it, Wartime Farm and Kitchen? It might be something like that. But that's an older series.
One.
Well, there's also Wartime Farm is another one. And, they all give a little bit of a picture of what happens with the food. Look back at the historical, what has happened food-wise in nations, and what people have to do to deal with it. So it's a good thing to be aware of and realize that it changes life really quickly. Just trying to deal with the food aspect of war.
Well, and resources, even if it's not on our soil, World War II, we had issues.
Yeah.
Europe had issues with food and food production. Of course, you remember I can't think of the exact, there was a lot of signs and the victory gardens and a lot of things encouraging people. So let's get proactive.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, number 2. Civil unrest, just short of war or armed conflict, this happens from time to time. He gives an example of the Canadian trucker strike in 2021. That's a pretty mild case, but civil unrest is another disruptor that can, and when we're looking at, and especially in our country, a more and more fractionalized political system and process, that becomes more and more of a real possibility.
Yeah, we start seeing rumblings of that. We've seen them in the last few years.
Seattle in, was that 2020 or 2021?
Yeah, you start seeing little bits and go, wow, this could go bad really quickly. And, the reality is I hate to say it this way, but we just really don't have a moral people anymore.
We have moral degradation in
Yeah.
our culture, and that leads to problems, and that leads to when people get afraid, whatever the reason is, or they get deeply unhappy with their government, you end up with civil unrest. That disrupts all kinds of things.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that was number 2. Number 3, lockdowns.
Yeah, who thinks you're going to see that again? I do, actually. I think that was a trial run.
Well, in January of 2020, if you would have said, if I would have gone to a friend, anybody I know, and said, sometime in the next couple months, most of the United States is going to be locked down and be convinced to stay in their homes, not go to work, not travel. And in fact, it's going to happen all over the world.
Oh,
Anybody would have laughed and said, that's not possible. It's especially not possible in the United States of America.
Absolutely.
And yet we know what happened.
Yeah.
And we went through what we now call COVID. And I agree with you. That was a test run. That was just the beginning. It's
Yeah.
coming again, whatever the reason is. And I think we all understand very well the disruption that caused. And that's been a big motivator for a lot of people, which is great. But we're getting removed from it, and I see people kind of getting relaxed, getting a little like,
Yeah.
not so worried about it. Those seeds are down in the basement. I'll get them if I need them, right? The beans, Band-Aids, and bullets mentality. I'll just stockpile it. We need to live prepared.
yeah. Yeah, and I think you and I have heard a lot of people, a lot of homesteaders, people who have been developing their homesteads, start saying things like, I'm just not going to do so much next year. It's a lot of work. I think I'm going to relax a little. And I think it's really important to point out, we're looking at maybe the calm before the storm. Like, we haven't just gotten through the storm, whatever the storm is. We're in a situation where we're kind of in society's degrading in a lot of places. It is going to continue to get less stable any way you look at it.
Yeah.
I don't look at any sector of our society and go, oh wow, that's just really getting more stable. Like that's we're going to really depend on that, as
Right.
whether we're talking medicine, morality, families,
Government, institutions,
all of it,
fiscal
education,
responsibility,
finances, all of it is like, this doesn't look so good.
Well, and and again, it's not to be a harbinger of doom, but civilizations go through a historical pattern, and that's a whole nother discussion. But it is a reality, it is a truth that all civilization go through a historical pattern, and we are on the downside of that historical pattern. With that, all civilizations, when I did research for the School of Traditional Skills, there is record back to the Roman Empire and even to Mesopotamia of people going back to, they didn't call it homesteading, but going back to the land, going back to rural communities, and shoring themselves up and beginning to live prepared. So it is a reality, and civil unrest is a little hard to imagine in America, but it can come. And when people get very, very dissatisfied, enough of them, it happens, and it disrupts things, whatever level it is.
Yeah.
And along with lockdowns, sorry, we were already on the lockdowns, but that's a new one in our mentality, lockdowns in the American psyche, but it's a reality, and I agree, it's probably coming again. Here's another one we really take for granted, and that is the grid, and grid breakdown specifically, and the possibility of our grid, whether it's a failure on the inside because it's so fragile and so flip of a switch and so dependent on code, or whether it is some sort of intentional attack against it, we can't go very long as a society grid down, or large sections of grid down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, does anybody else think it's absolutely crazy that we keep channeling more and more things to electric? Now we're electric vehicles, right? The big push is electric vehicles. And yet we're already dealing with rolling blackouts in the middle of summer because we're already overloading our grid to the point where we're having to shut things down. And yet we're channeling more and more things onto this same grid that's already proving that it's weak and not able to handle what it is we're throwing at it at this point. So I think that becomes, grid down, maybe we're talking major grid down. That's definitely a scenario. But I think we all have to be absolutely prepared for the fact that our grid's not going to continue being as stable because of over demand.
And that's actually the bigger reality. Regional grid down, brownouts,
Temporary,
blackouts. We are not producing. We don't have a system that's producing enough electricity to keep up with the increased demand
Right.
for all of these things. That is a reality. And so it's reality that electricity is going to get more expensive, way more expensive in the coming decade or two. And there's going to be service issues without war, without some of the other things that could affect the fragility of the system. And so getting prepared for that is really, really important.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily means going wholly off grid, that you need to freak out and go spend $30, $50, $80,000 on an off-grid solar system, but you can start building resiliency
Yeah.
to deal with that.
Yeah, and we actually have a whole pantry chat where we talk about some of the, I think we called it the lies of going off grid.
Yeah.
Off grid lies. And so that would be a really good one to listen to if you're interested more in that topic, because you do have to go into that with your eyes wide open.
Yeah. And there are lots of things that, without going totally off grid, in fact, staying on grid, where you can create a system where you've got backups for power from a month to a year, and not necessarily with going off grid.
Right.
Just being prepared and having backups, just like you'd have in your pantry, like you'd have in your barn if you've got animals, extra feed stored, all your supplies. You can do that with electricity. Number 5 is sabotage. Shortly after 9/11, the agriculture media carried numerous reports about sabotage vulnerability and how to make sure your farm was not susceptible. Our food and water system can be easily poisoned,
Yes.
is one. Our transportation system, again, our grid system, all of these things can disrupt our food supply.
Yeah, I think we were just watching the Epic Times has the No Food, No Farmers, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
A show on there, and we were watching that, and they were referring to how much of our farmland is now owned by China. Big companies in China
Yeah.
owning the farmland, and how easy it would be to shut down some of our major food systems in our country because, somebody who looks like they're politically enemies of ours, I don't know if we say that, I don't think we quite acknowledge that yet politically
we
out
should.
loud, but I
mean,
think we all kind of know that in rumblings, that
Well
they're
understood.
owning a lot of our farmland and a lot of our food production systems, and that's kind of a scary thing.
And, we can get on the trail of that shouldn't be because it shouldn't be and, get really upset. That's a different subject.
Right.
It is reality, and that's just one. You control the food, you can control the people. We have our own concerns from large corporate control of the food supply.
Yeah.
That they can turn a switch and, sabotage the food system intentionally to control people. So there's a lot of reasons where sabotage can come in, and it's one it's fairly unimaginable to us in our society, but it's one we need to understand is a potential reality.
But I think it's also good to be aware that, this is actually happening on some small scale right now. There have been so many fires and disasters in food processing plants across the country. Now, are those all proven to be sabotage? No, probably not. I don't know. You don't hear the follow-up news on these things. But you start looking at patterns of things that are happening. Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist. I probably am. But I'm also looking at patterns and going, that doesn't seem likely.
Well, it's one of the beautiful things about the information age and that I love about technology. There can be a lot of proliferation of bad information, certainly.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot more good information, and there's a lot more validity and understanding to the realities that there are different forces at work that can affect our systems. Besides the random ones, there are potentially intentional ones.
Yeah.
And it's good to be living aware and preparing for that.
Absolutely.
Number 6 is disease. This is another one that we kind of go, I think even with COVID, a lot of people think, oh, that was manufactured, that was whatever. Whatever COVID was, the point is not to argue whether it was or was not. Disease can affect us, and we think that we're so sophisticated in this world that we're conquering most of them, and that to truly have something, and even COVID got overblown, right? It didn't do the damage they said it was going to do.
Right.
And that makes us go, oh, that couldn't really happen.
Yeah.
disease is a part of human history, and we are not above it. We are not past it, even though we have, areas of our medical system that fight it well and that have contained a lot of it as far as a lot of the world goes. We can still have disasters that arise out of disease.
We're actually heading towards more disasters because of some of the ways we've handled things with the medical system. Antibiotic resistance is a major, major problem.
Yeah.
And it is creeping up and it is taking over. And, right now we're still kind of hush, hush, hush. It's not making big news, but it is killing. I was just reading, it's moving towards one of the top killers in the United States already. And we don't really have great answers for it. We've already kind of outrun our own medical system.
Well, the medical system doesn't really want you to understand that fact is a product of other areas of our medical system.
Yeah, and the agriculture system.
Unintentionally, I would say, hopefully creating these, resistant type bacteria and other things that, we're not going to be able to fight.
Yeah, there is actually evidence too that I've been seeing that some of the vaccine things and some of the things that we've said, we're not going to deal with that again. We've kind of eradicated, vaccines are working. They've actually mutated beyond the vaccines. And so we're starting to have problems with things coming back out that we haven't seen before. So we do have to be aware that just because we have our modern medical system doesn't mean we're in the clear and we can handle all these things and they're just not going to be a widespread problem anymore. It's not likely.
I'd say just like breakdown, like war, things that we haven't experienced a lot, we think we're immune to, but civilizations, eventually the cycle happens and one or more of these things comes back around. Finally, number 7, and that is environmental disaster. His example here is Hurricane Katrina. Yeah. And, we're really not that equipped, and it happens regionally. So as a nation, I don't think we always grasp some of the effects of some of these events if you're not in the region.
Right.
But we actually aren't able to handle them well, and I don't even fault the government for that. Natural disasters are natural disasters.
Right.
And they, cause destruction and they cause problems.
Yeah.
And just about anywhere you live, there is some potentiality for one form of natural or environmental disaster. And that's not even with going into some of the things that we're causing.
Right.
I'd say that we're causing potential environmental disaster the way we farm, by the way we've destroyed the soil, the way we chemicalize it, the watershed, what that does. I think that is an environmental disaster on a large scale coming. And so that would be a man-made one that I think is out in the future. But they're a reality that we're often kind of, if you haven't just lived through something in your region, a little like, yeah, that could never happen here.
Yeah. I think in general, a lot of what we're seeing here and a lot of what he's talking about in his 7 reasons is we may not be as stable as we've been used to being. Our future maybe doesn't look quite as stable as maybe the most recent 50 years, 100 years of our history has looked. And it's something that we need to come to terms with and be ready to deal with.
That is very well said, that it's something we need to come to terms with. And it's the point of talking about these things, because every culture gets successful, or every successful major empire culture gets successful. We get comfortable.
Right.
And we think we've got it all under control and we're padded because our systems work well. We're fairly wealthy as a nation, as a people.
Yeah.
And you just think these things can't happen. And the reality is they do happen. They happen in historical cycles. We're in one of those cycles. And it's important to be aware of these things, not to go walk in fear, not to freak out at the news, but to be informed, to better understand what are the possible realities.
Okay. Let's don't freak out, but you want to spend a couple of minutes on each one of these topics and see if we want to embellish on them any. Number 1 was war. Anybody want to take that one?
I think oh, go ahead.
It'll be a constant in our culture, in our world, because we have so many different cultures that view humanity differently and not on a Christ-centered perspective. And even though we as a nation, as the World War I and World War II, were pretty much based on Christianity, um, there are all kinds of other perspectives in the world that don't look at the individual souls with the value that we do. And then we also don't always look with the compassion and kindness that we should on other societies too. So war is always going to be a real potential until the end of times, I believe. It's just not realistic to think it's all going to go away.
I agree, especially in our day and age where you can't just disagree and agree to disagree. There's got to be hate and venom, and you're wrong, and I'm going to kill you because of your opinion, right? And that is just on a social level that we're dealing with. It's not even on a world level and different religion level, and right? It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that, and I think you're absolutely right. I don't think it will. It's not ever going to go away. And we're warned of that. Wars and rumors of wars.
Simple living, hard work, natural health care, real food, and building an agrarian society. If you're pioneering your way through modern noise and conveniences, and you're an advocate for living a more sustainable and quiet life, this podcast is for you. Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm your host, Amy, and I'm the founder of the Homesteaders of America organization and annual events. If you're not familiar with us, we are a resource for homesteading education and online support, and we even host a couple of in-person events each year, with our biggest annual event happening right outside the nation's capital here in Virginia every.
Okay, finally. What that was about. Anyway, continue. Okay, enough for war. What was this? What was the second one?
I didn't write it down.
Civil unrest.
The thing that I wrote down under civil unrest was a lack of morality. I think we've been seeing that for many years, and it's getting worse. And we're being told right is wrong and wrong is right. And right, it's just that whole swirl of the great and spacious building. It's the whole swirl of Bill and I were talking eons ago just about voting is okay as long as the righteous are voting. But at some point, the righteous can be unbalanced, right? And I think that that's a little bit where society is. We don't have those moral guidances anymore. And more people are saying it doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter. And I think that leads to that civil unrest is you don't see it my way, and so I have to hate you. And that it's just a swirl. That swirl gets larger and larger and encompasses more topics and more despicable you're despicable because you don't believe the way I believe.
And some people can riot and do whatever and not be punished, and so why not do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no can't think.
There's no respect.
There's no respect, and there's no there's no law that stops them. Just like what Winston was saying, nothing happened, we did it, nothing happened, so we'll do it again. Right? There's no consequence. Consequence was the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
So
number 3 was lockdowns.
Oh, huh. So much so already happened, and for such a long time. It devastated so many people, so many businesses, and everything else. It set our culture for the
yeah,
COVID.
absolutely. I would like to think that it can't happen again. I would like to think that it won't happen again. I listened to our apostles shortly thereafter, essentially saying our civil rights were stepped on to meet and to worship how we want to. it made me wonder if it does happen again, what the church's stance would be. Right? Because we also believe in following rules and following laws and following, right? And so
But those
I've
well
got,
laws and rules, and these were very chaotic.
yeah,
And it's really kind of an interesting thing for me. When you drive up to church on Sunday and you drive past the Catholic Church, how many cars do you see there?
oh, I don't pay attention.
Oh, well, when we moved here, the pastorate where the priest actually lives is behind that building. There is a house back there, and the chapel was actually in the basement, a walkout basement
Of his house.
of that house. Yes, because
Oh,
that was how big the church was. They were a very small congregation. But this Sunday, I mean, I've been, noticing it because we go at 11 o'clock or go early enough that I can try and get there for choir at 11 o'clock. And the parking lot is pretty much full every Sunday. Well, this Sunday, I was are they parking down the road? Because it was
It was Easter.
overburdened, the parking lot was. And I'm seeing that we've got this huge population attending church there now compared to what it was 40 years ago when we moved here. Because I went to my Livy's best friend, they were 6 years old when we moved here. And so when Amy turned 8, she had her first communion and it was in the basement. Now it's got a huge population. So I'm wondering how many other churches will rebel against that kind of a lockdown again.
yeah.
Because it's not just us. I think that there are enough people who saw how much it could damage your congregation.
Well, speaking
Yeah,
of
but
that,
then,
speaking of
right,
that,
it goes back to that. So we've been told to uphold the law. We've been told to follow the law,
But when
right?
it's a ridiculous law that isn't
Yeah, but I've
blocked,
never been told you only have to follow sane laws, right? Church, we believe in following the laws of the land. And now all of a sudden,
but
we don't like the lockdown. We see the damage that it did. That not even just damage to the stores, damage to our children,
uh-huh.
right? And so it's like, so at what point all of a sudden do we not follow the law? At what point do we say no? Right? This isn't right. This didn't work the last time. It's not going to work this time, and I'm not doing that.
And so will that be the time when we have the civil disobedience that people are not going to have that pushed upon them? And but we could go into this discussion for a long time. It's just a very frustrating what happened wasn't right, and it won't be right if it happens again too under the same.
we better go
Yeah,
on.
and that is where that civil unrest will come from.
We better
Because
go
some
down
will feel like we need to follow the rules, and others will say, you are taking my civil liberties away, and they will fight for those.
grid down.
Grid down. We see it coming. We see it coming. We've got family and friends in California, and PG&E is out of control, and their bills have tripled in the last 4 years. And right, that's very real. That's very real. In fact, in there someplace he said that there is a way to have enough power back up for a year, and I'm interested in finding out how that
got my
happens.
attention too. I've never heard of such.
Yeah, what is that can give me power for a year? So I wrote that down with a little question mark. I'm interested in finding whatever that system is.
Yeah, maybe it's storing diesel fuel for a generator, but that's all I could think of. But anyway, that ties in real good. Grid down ties in with number 5, sabotage, I think. We've already seen.
Yeah,
And with the bridge and with the electrical, I think it's even easier than bridge and lower tech.
yeah, absolutely. Even the statements that they were making about China owns the majority of American farmland. America does not own a steel plant anymore. We've sold all of our steel plants to other nations.
We don't
And
own an
just
ammo plant either.
yeah, right. And so just the fact that these other nations could say, no, we're not farming that land, and no, we're closing down all the Wendy's and all the McDonald's and all the whatever, right? America would be in a panic. And that's not even sabotage. That's just saying, oh no, it's not working out for us there, so we're going to shut it down. And it's our land, so you're not allowed to farm it. Right? I can see tricky things like that happening.
They already did that with pork production, the pork processing plants.
I had heard a couple of years ago, but I don't know. I heard it and I thought pork prices were going to go sky high, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal on that. I too suspected pork was going to go up because Smithfield sold out to some Chinese firm, and then they closed the ones on the West Coast, but they haven't closed the ones on the East, as far as I know.
Yeah, what happens when they do? And
Yeah.
then those prices really do go sky high.
Yeah, but they definitely have the possibility of doing that. And of course, 6 was disease, so tying in with what we said before, with the lockdown, whether it happen again, I think they'll have to have bigger, badder diseases every time, to keep people in that same cycle. My thoughts.
Fear is a strong motivator.
Yeah.
And so when you're telling people you're going to get sick and you're going to have family members die and this is going to happen, that is a strong motivator, especially when some of us are a little bit more recluse than others. And then we're going, yay, make me stay home. Yippee. We loved it. I loved having Bill here. And it was just after my cancer journey. And I had already reclused for 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And so it came very natural to us. But yeah, I think what the media does is creates a fear, and that fear controls people.
Yeah. And number 7 was environmental disaster, and I would just like to comment on that one that most civilizations have ended due to degradation of their farmland, and once they get to the point that they can't feed their people, then the civilization ends. And and we've been working on that for 200 years here,
Yeah. Yeah. Mother Nature it can be brutal, but man's limited vision is pretty brutal as well.
I mean, we were a nation that just started out with, we'll farm this land on the East Coast until it wears out, and then we'll move west and farm that one until it wears out, and then we'll move west again, and it's unlimited supply, so we didn't take care of anything.
Yeah.
Just even the best of how much of the grazing lands that the bison had kept healthy. And where I grew up, it is barren. It is not I like being on the East Coast because it's just so dry and so unproductive in my vision.
Yeah.
Okay, I got another short video to play. I've skipped over the introductory, and we'll come in here in the middle, but think about what he's telling us here.
Little by little, any way they can, in the name of progress. And guys, it just irritates me to no end to see them doing this to our food system. That's why I keep telling people, please grow your food. Quit going to these places and buying. Now, Ms. Wanda, I'll give you for instance, Ms. Wanda, the doctor, when we were there, told us that she her iron was low. We really need to raise her iron. And he advised her, please eat at least one apple a day. And in the deep south where we live at here, it's not apple season. And our apple trees aren't big enough to bear apples here. So we're sitting here. I told Wanda, I said, well, we can go get some organic apples, Well, come to find out, they could possibly have a peel on them. So we had to do some research and find out that Joyfully Grown is a company that literally states that their products does not have a peel on them. They're non-GMO, they have no appeal or anything like that used on them. So I told her, I said, there's no chemicals sprayed on and stuff like that. So I told her, I said, well, at least, maybe, this is kind of helpful for you to eat, right now, so we can do better. It's so sad that we have to go do tons of research into something in a grocery store before we can even consume it, knowing that it's healthy for us to eat. The day of just going to a grocery store and going around through the produce department saying, oh, look at this beautiful produce, that's over. Because that's what a peel does. A peel makes those citruses and cucumbers and avocados and mangoes and stuff like that, it makes them look so appealing because they look perfect. It makes them look perfect. What person wants to go in a grocery store and pick up something and go, oh, this don't look good, I ain't eating that, and you see this beautiful one sitting there and you go, oh, look at this, it looks so healthy. It's a lie. Guys, it's a lie, and it irritates me to no end that it's a lie. And I hate it. I literally hate it, but there's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is sound the whistle that it's out there. And it's up to you, just as like it was up to us when that we've got to really do the research to be able to figure out if this food is fit to eat, or are we doing more damage to our system by ingesting this stuff than if we did not ingest it. That's where we're at. Wanda and I advocate, please, permaculture. If I could preach permaculture more and more and more, I would. Because permaculture is the only thing that's going to keep you alive in the near future. Because literally, you're going to have stuff stuck in the landscape. Go back and look at Gideon in the Bible. Read the story of Gideon, for heaven's sakes. Gideon was living during a time in which they were going around confiscating all the food and everything. And Gideon was literally taking what little wheat he had grown secretly, and he had took it not to where the threshing floor was, because that's where they were watching everybody, to take what they had. Gideon was at the olive press, threshing his wheat, when the angels came to him. See, he was hiding, trying to keep what food he could for his family. And guys, that's where we're at. That's why permaculture is so vitally important. You need to grow forever plants. Now, I don't eat artichokes, the Jerusalem artichokes, but hey, if you love them, they're a great forever plant. You need to plant things like blueberries and grapes and your perennial plants, your herbs. You need things like rosemary, thyme, things, mints that are just invasive, that just grow, and they look like part of the landscape. Put your stuff in the landscape and make it look like part of the landscape, so that people don't readily associate it with something from a grocery store. If it looks like it comes from a grocery store, they may take it from you. But if they don't readily recognize it, that's why permaculture is so great out in the woods. You just look out in the woods and you go, well, it just looks like woods to me. But to the trained eye who has put stuff in specific places in the woods, it is a food source for those people. Like in our woods around here, we have huckleberries everywhere. We can eat huckleberries. We got blackberries. Lots of people don't want to pick the blackberries because they got thorns all over them. But you know what? why don't you pick a few spots out on your property if you own property and go put some of the thornless blackberries out there and let them grow up? And people will say, well, I'm not messing with things. They got thorns all over them. Well, not every one of them would have thorns on them, if you know what I mean. Stick stuff in the landscape. I mean, your rosemary, stick it off out there in the edge of the field or something like that. It loves being abused and left alone, you know. Throw you some. I got friends who plant potatoes just wild right out in the woods, and they just leave them. They don't even harvest them. And every so often they go out there and just casually dig a couple of them up, because lots of times they won't go bad if you just leave them in the ground. I mean, I know people who do that with sweet potatoes. They do the same exact things with sweet potatoes. They just leave a few in the ground just in case. And if they lose all they got, and next year where those were at, lots of times the slips come back up from the ones from before. Now your Oriental varieties, they call them, they're not really Oriental, all of them, but your Okinawa sweet potatoes, or your Musaki sweet potatoes, or a lot of your dark purple sweet potatoes, you can't kill those cotton picking things. You put them in the ground and they just stay there for years, you know. So you need forever plants. Garlic. We use the garlic here in the South a lot where we're at. You know, I mean, that's part of our forever plant. Multiplying onions. We just have them stuck in the landscape all around. People don't think too much about that kind of stuff when they see it, because that is definitely, not only is it a medicinal plant, but it is also something that you can eat and enjoy, because it puts good flavoring in something. Now, I get a big kick out of Ms. Wanda. We stored up some taco seasonings that was gluten-free, GMO-free, and all that kind of stuff here years ago. And I told her, I said, why are you buying up all this taco seasoning? And she said, well, the way I look at it, now you got to know Ms. Wanda, you have to know her sense of humor. The way I look at it, if I got to eat a bunch of squirrels or something that I don't particularly care for the taste of, if I mix a little taco seasoning in with it, it kind of just masks that wild taste of an animal, you know. And I'm like, hey, you know what? That's not a bad idea, because there was a point in my life where I was supposed to, I told them I would cook the gumbo for a function at a church up in central Mississippi, and I was originally going to make sausage gumbo, but everybody eats sausage gumbo, you know, and chicken gumbo, everybody has chicken gumbo, and I was thinking, So I went to work on that. I made this big, huge pot of gumbo, and I had all this meat in it. Everybody at the church was just gobbling it down. You know what I mean? They said, man, this is some of the best gumbo I've ever eaten, you know. And later that evening, after everything was over, we were cleaning up, somebody said, man, that's the best gumbo I ever eat. Said, what in the world? Man, I didn't even bring a gun with me, and look at that. There's crow sitting right here. But asked me, said, what in the world did you put in that gumbo to make?
So, what you think?
Yes.
What was
Squirrel?
in
Awesome.
the...
Raccoon.
you got
Coyote.
No, it wasn't coyote. Liz got it the first
Jeez.
one. It was squirrel.
Ah,
Herb Reynolds would have been proud of him. But,
Yep.
so who is it I was hearing?
I think
Was
it's,
that Georgette?
I think so.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool.
But anyway, the thing I wanted to get out of that was the thing about spreading your herbs and various things around your place, because even in the most strict HOA, you can still you know, a lot of your herbs look like landscaping plants, and
Very true.
a lot of things you can put around that most people won't recognize as food. Kind of goes along with guerrilla gardening, and
There was a show, Growing a Greener World, and they had a woman who was living in an HOA, and a garden was strictly forbidden. And so she did her plantings, and she had this big swath of this grassy material, and but it was like 4 foot wide and about 25 feet long across her front lawn, and it was kind of a backdrop, kind of a dividing part in her yard. Anyway, she won the HOA best yard award that summer. It was all vegetables, and that grassy swath was barley. So she did all this stuff in her landscaping and created a landscape with vegetables. And people didn't recognize that it was actually gardening.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, a lot you can do.
City slickers.
And there's a lot of things that we can just put out in the pasture and, just one of the more, another weed out there, like purslane and things like that, very nutritious, but.
Well, we have a problem doing that because our sheep will eat it. They know it's good.
It'll come back though. Pretty tough. It'll grow in the crack in the sidewalk and survive, so.
Fine, yeah. But they killed up that orange flower that was a weed. I can't remember what the name of it was.
Butterfly weed.
Okay. They decimated that.
It still comes back every year, seems like. It's a perennial. Well, it's pushing 9 o'clock. I think we should wrap this up, and thank everybody for their participation, and we'll shut it down and do it again next week.
Perfect.